The following program contains distressing scenes.
So much it's difficult to sum it up simply, but as everybody knows, 20-odd years ago there was a murder in West Cork, and at the time I was a journalist, freelance journalist, and I finished up reporting on the crime, and within a few weeks I had been identified by the guards falsely as a suspect. That was 20-odd years ago. And I have, throughout that period, I've done everything that I could to protest my innocence. Because I know that I have nothing to do with this. And I know that the false narrative that I did have something to do with it is a complete myth. I can't prove that. I know that. It's difficult, a gap between knowing something and being able to prove. So I've been left in a situation where I've been accused in France of the murder. I can't travel out of the state. I've already been subjected to 2 European arrest warrants. And I don't know from day to day how that's going to play out. All I know is it's going to be awful.
Yeah, this is all vegetables in the summer. So we always have something out here that we can pick and eat. Purple sprouting broccoli. This is why I have no thumbnails. It's absolutely delicious, I promise you. Lovely in stir fries as well.
It's a fucking tragedy. You have a situation where a lady is murdered, and then you have this fucking massive cover-up. The French are assured in 1997. Don't worry, we know who murdered your daughter. He's an English bastard called Ian Bailey. The only problem we have is we don't quite have enough evidence against him. But don't worry, we'll sort that out. Great. Oh. Right.
So what have we got?
Witness detail.
I don't really want to go through this, but this is right from the beginning. These are the very earliest newspaper headlines. Tuesday, February 11th. That's the day after the first arrest. Man held over court murder freed by Gardaí. 16th of February, 1997. That was a photograph of me. That was me then. Oh, for fuck's sake.
I met Ian, actually, the day that Sophie's body was found. I was called, I was working mainly as a press photographer.
About 250 meters, yards, turning to the right.
So I actually picked him up at his house, and he directed me to Sophie's house.
When was the first day that you became aware that the cops were looking at Bailey?
Very early in January, they rang me and said, could they come down and interview me? They kept sort of asking me, you know, did I notice anything about Ian? Did I notice if he had scars on his hands or face or marks or anything like that? And I said, genuinely, I didn't, you know. But I got from it straight away that they were looking at him. If I remember rightly, he was arrested for the first time on a Monday. I got a call from a journalist, and she said, he's being arrested today. And she said, I think the guards are actually at his house now. This was about 8 o'clock in the morning. To me, it came from a journalist, but I'm imagining that it came from the guards to her, you know?
So you went in this way?
So I went in this way, but in those days you could just freely walk in there, get to the back of the building and shoot across the car park.
Before 11 o'clock, Chief Superintendent Noel Smith, in charge of the investigation, announced that the man held would be released without charge.
Are you disappointed?
You look more disappointed than I am. You thought I was going to be carrying the head out here, I suppose.
Earlier this week, a local man, a journalist, Owen Bailey, was arrested and questioned for 12 hours by Gardaí about the murder. And in an unusual development for Ireland, he was identified in several newspapers as having been...
Once that photograph hit the newspapers, everybody knew then whom the guards, at least, believed perpetrated the crime. Everybody in Skull had a view. You were either for Bailey or against him, I think.
The phone didn't stop ringing. The place was inundated with reporters. We had the curtains drawn on the house for about a month after that arrest. Complete blackout in the house.
So I get a solicitor. I pick this man called Colin Murphy. And he comes along, he says, don't say anything and stay stum.
The small country roadway beside where Owen Bailey lives was blocked with traffic today as the media gathered to hear his story.
But my instinct is if I had nothing to do with the thing I was being accused of, I'm not going to remain silent.
The Garda Síochána are saying that they didn't release my name. But who did?
But you're saying to me here, you didn't kill Sophie de Plantier, nor did you have any part in that.
I am saying to you that I didn't kill her. I had no knowledge of the killing, and I'm an innocent man. After the first arrest, it was fucking hell. It really was. Dreadful, shocking. It's funny, because it creates a ball of fear. You get this thing of fear right in your guts. I was 39 when this began, 39. I'm 62 now. Most of my hair's gone. A lot of these teeth are not the originals. Of course, they arrested Jules, too. How are you going to deal with a situation like that?
Ian Bailey invited me into his house and into his warm kitchen while Jules Thomas made tea for us and offered scones and so on, which is an extraordinary situation.
Ian was a person that craved publicity.
Je ne suis pas quelqu'un de violent, je suis pacifiste et je ne suis pas un assassin.
He couldn't be normal. He always loved attention, and the more it was in the paper, the more he wanted it.
But every time I think he gave an interview, it really just copper-fastened his associations with the entire investigation.
In the wake of all of this publicity, can you stay in West Cork? Do you want to stay in West Cork?
I certainly want to stay in West Cork, and I believe I will stay in West Cork.
But the cloud over your name will not be lifted, really, until someone is charged and convicted with the murder of Sophie Toscan de Plantier.
That is correct.
C'est un des gros problèmes que je porte et que je vis, c'est qu'en général, quand on parle de ma mère, c'est toujours pour me parler de sa mort. Le vrai sujet de ma mère, c'est pas l'heure où elle est morte, c'est 40 ans avant, et puis c'est toute la vie durant, ce qu'elle aura laissé autour d'elle.
Pierre-Louis is Sophie's son from her first marriage. Her only child, he was just 15 when she was murdered. Throughout his childhood, Pierre-Louis spent magical moments with his mother in Tourmore. After her death, Pierre decided to keep the house, and he still spends time there every year. It remains a tangible link to his mother.
Alors, ça c'est la carte, c'est un morceau de la carte que ma mère avait quand elle a choisi la maison en 90. Et elle avait visité une 50aine de maisons. Et elle en avait cherché, donc chaque fois qu'elle visitait une maison, elle l'entourait. Et quand c'était en rouge, c'était que c'était une maison intéressante. Et elle en avait shortlisté 2, une dans le Connemara et celle-ci. À l'époque, dans ce salon, même, il y avait pas de canapé, il y avait un tapis et 3 fauteuils. Rien, basta. Le principe, même quand j'étais gamin, on s'asseyait dans le salon pour lire et on ne faisait rien d'autre. Donc il y avait vraiment la recherche du... Peut-être pas de la méditation, mais en tout cas, on n'allait pas chercher le confort. Et on était là pour profiter du silence aussi. Ouais. Ou de la pompe à fioul qui brûle. Ah, je vais vous montrer quelque chose. Voilà, pour vous montrer à quel point ma mère s'aimait et voulait se montrer. C'est la seule photo d'elle qu'il y avait dans la maison. Alors, elle est complètement passée depuis avec le temps. Et c'est une photo d'elle quand elle était en Inde, à Sarasota. On discerne des pieds, là. Avec, en fait, elle était debout. Ça, c'est le manteau de maman. C'était le manteau qu'elle portait ici. Et elle l'a posé il y a 25 ans et il n'a pas bougé depuis. Donc, c'est l'histoire. L'histoire n'est pas dans les murs. L'histoire est aussi dans la porte, sur la porte. C'était le thé qu'elle buvait et on l'a pas... Je l'ai pas changé depuis. Il doit être un peu moisi, mais bon, ça reste... Ça reste des objets importants parce que finalement les odeurs... Et donc la maison, c'est un vrai relais pour leur expliquer qui elle était. Moi, je vis pas du tout l'horreur de ce qui s'est passé ici. Pas du tout, parce que j'y pense pas, parce qu'inconsciemment, mon cerveau, il compartimente le drame et l'horreur. Clairement, là, il y a eu des cris, il y a eu du sang sur les murs, il y a eu... Mais en tout cas, moi, mon esprit, il s'attache à ce que j'ai vécu ici avant, et ce que je vis aujourd'hui, et ce que je vivrai demain. Et tout ce qui s'est passé à cet instant où on a assassiné ma mère, c'est quelque chose qui s'est un peu évaporé. Je me souviens très bien de cette photo. Elle est bien là. Il y a très peu de photos de maman et moi, et même d'une manière générale. C'est la seule dans la maison, mais elle est bien dans la cuisine. C'est un bon endroit pour être présents tous les deux.
We still feel great sadness at such a tragedy happening in Goleen.
All the neighbours there would be anxious, you know.
It makes everybody feel rather uneasy.
During the course of that investigation, Gardaí have arrested people and have interviewed literally hundreds. But despite this, the person who killed Madame de Plantier amid the peace and tranquility of her West Cork home still hasn't been found.
Everybody terrified, women terrified, you know. And then you start getting reports of sort of like my neighbour's son being told by Bailey in a car that he'd done the murder, you know.
He was 14. It was on the Wednesday, about 2 months after Sophie had died. And Malachi saw Mr. Bailey in town and he got a lift with him, which was quite normal here. He said that he got in the car and Mr. Bailey was behaving quite agitatedly, and he turned round and told him that he'd smashed her brains in. He used the words effing brains in. And Malachi was quite distressed at the time. Well, I think he thought, he didn't know if he was telling the truth or if he was just acting crazily or whatever.
Now there's a population in Ireland at the time of over 4.5 million. And why was one fella telling people that he did the murder?
The police focused in on Bailey very quickly after the crime.
They did, but there was no other males in the area that came under the radar.
But from what I can figure out, the Irish police weren't allowed to interrogate anybody in France.
Oh no, oh no. When they went across to France, and they, out of courtesy, went to the local gendarmerie. They were told to stand there for a minute, and the officer came down to ask what was it about, and they told him, and he told them straight out that they were not to investigate and not to question any French citizen, to go back to the airport and go back to Ireland. And that's the French system. That's the way it is. The evidence would have to go back that way, and then the French would take over. And it's the fact that where the scene is, that they knew the crime scene, knew the area, would have been difficult to know it was there. That's the way I looked at it.
I agree with that, unless it's an arranged killing. What I'm saying is,
yeah, I know what
if we're just going down one road,
yeah,
and we can't go the other road,
yeah,
there's no point in investigating that in France. The guards knew that every contact leaves a trace, so they sent the forensic tests away in high expectation. What came back would be highly unusual.
There was so small DNA on the briar thorns that it wouldn't have been capable of producing evidence.
None of Bailey's DNA was found under Sophie's nails, and Bailey's hair sample didn't match, as the hair in Sophie's hands turned out to be her own. The blood on the door was Sophie's.
The gate was taken off because there was blood along the top of the gate.
Yeah, was that Sophie's blood?
That was Sophie's blood, but that was it.
There was no evidence of a sexual assault. He would have left fingerprints, no?
They can be cleaned easily. If you rub, fingerprints are gone.
But the whole police thing was it was a frenzied attack by a sociopath, and then you have to turn him into this career criminal who cleans the scene. They don't work together.
No, they don't, and that's unlikely.
The breeze block with the blood on it, that wouldn't have fingerprints on it.
No, because the surface of the breeze block won't hold fingerprints. You won't get it.
This person was very lucky who killed her, weren't they?
Oh, absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt. No doubt.
There should really have been more evidence than there was, because the theory of forensic science is that every contact leaves a trace. Now, you've got to find the traces too, of course.
There is effectively not a scintilla of evidence there to prosecute Ian Bailey for it. No, and Bailey, without it being necessary for him to do so, gave samples. He didn't hide anything.
Statement of Brian Jackson, taken on the 7th of February 1997. I recalled that on or about Christmas time, and I smelled the fire and I heard it crackling. It smelled like a garden fire and it smelled like garden rubbish. I thought it was unusual for Ian to be cleaning up the garden that time of year, or indeed any time of year.
We had a fire. We were clearing out that house from somebody who'd been there before and hadn't taken all their rubbish. An old mattress and that sort of thing, you know? We just put a fire in the back, but that was in November.
And how did people...
Or October even.
But people were saying that the fire at the studio was Christmas time.
I think that was the guards cooking it up myself.
I investigated the bonfire that was reported by locals, and we found in the burned remains furniture, bed furniture, beddings.
He was wearing this big black overcoat. The black coat we didn't find it. It was burnt. So for that reason, it's understandable that there was no blood on him. You know, no DNA found on anything belonged to him.
So what happened to Ian's big black overcoat?
They took it. The cops took it. Apparently it got cut into inch squares and they tested every square inch for blood.
Detective Garda Pat Joy. On the 10th of February 1997, I went to a house known as the Studio House, Skull. In the studio house, in a room off the kitchen, I found a black overcoat on the sofa. I placed this overcoat in a brown paper bag, which I sealed and marked PJ24.
Yeah, really. That's what happened to his coat. Patchwork quilt, maybe, one day.
Yeah. Perhaps there was another black coat that was burned in the fire.
All right, no, out, no. I know what you're doing. Out. Oh, go on. Isn't she beautiful? She's a bluebell.
I mean, I was fairly successful as a journalist in another life, and I wasn't doing too badly here.
I mean, I wrote all of that. You can see Daily Star, date and everything, front page. As a freelance journalist, in effect, you're a pen for hire. Jokingly, I referred to freelance journalists as prostitutes. Well, I reached a point when I was about 28, 29, where I saw the total empty vacuousness of journalism and the damage, because you're in a very powerful position. Part of what I was doing, I was trained as a court reporter and other things, and I was sort of becoming aware of Buddhism. And I reached a point, I thought, fuck this. I can't do this anymore. I'm actually making a living out of writing about other people's misfortunes. I can't do it anymore. I mean, that was towards the time when did I come to Ireland? I was 38.
The guard said you knew a lot about the case, and you knew too much.
You know, you've got your sources as a journalist, and I was coming out with all the lead stories. Why? Because I'm down here, and because the French are coming in, and I'm liaising with the French, and I'm the only journalist who's doing that. You know, this is a big story. And I'm reporting on it, and then I started to get this rumour. People and journalists saying to me, you know, it's being said it's you who murdered her. I said, sure, yeah, of course I did. I needed a story.
That's irony, by the way. I'm being sarcastic. That isn't an admission.
In most cases, what happens is the guards investigate and then they pass a file to the DPP. It's a constitutional matter, so the guards have no power to prosecute anybody with an indictable offence unless authorised by the DPP.
The guards in this country are very good, and they're very skilled. They had done a huge amount of work, a massive amount of work. They felt they had sufficient evidence collated
around Kilvather Bridge. I saw the man on the road.
To have convinced the DPP to press charges. The DPP took a different view.
From the DPP's point of view, they had no scientific or forensic evidence to link Ian Bailey to the scene.
Bailey's reason for getting up on the night of the murder to write an article was found plausible. And as he was the only local journalist, he was the first at the scene of the crime. He said that he'd been led directly to Sophie's house because he was informed that the deceased was French. The Director of Public Prosecutions accepted his explanation.
We see ourselves sending up documentation to the DPP's office like this. We say that Ian Bailey made admissions that he committed the murder. And you get that down the week after, putting our weight in that was black humour and 'twas this and that. That's very frustrating for us to be listening to that. They disregarded, can you imagine our DPP, disregarding the morning after Phyllis' hands all scratched. He said he was taking down a Christmas tree, and that's where the scratches came from.
Yeah, no, I was with Ian. I mean, why buy a Christmas tree if you've got a perfectly good 10-foot growing next in your garden? Apparently there was guards climbing the trees and everything to see had we been chopping chops off them for the last several years.
Detective Garda Pat Joy. On the 19th of February 1997, Garda Bart O'Leary pointed out a Sitka spruce tree near the studio house to me. The top had been cut off of this tree. I photographed it. Then Garda Kevin Kelleher, who was also present, climbed the tree, and when he came back down, I photographed his hands.
And there wasn't one mark in them.
A number of guards had witnessed the scratches on Ian's hands and face, but they never took photos. Instead, they made sketches. This is their official record of the infamous scratches. There was another visual reference of Ian's hands, recorded at the Christmas swim. That day, you remember, Ian performed the poem, and the woman holding the camcorder made this statement.
When he finished reciting his poem, I stopped recording and wished him a happy Christmas, and extended my right hand out to shake hands with him. He had his hands deep in his pockets, and he took out his right hand and shook hands with me.
The police had to question this, as Ian's right hand is clearly not in his pocket, and his left hand is holding a camera.
The back of his hand was covered in visible scratches.
Here's his hands. It's hard to say either way if he had scratches, but the guards also said he had scratches up his arms. If he had his overcoat on, like they say at Kilfodder Bridge, then you have to believe he took it off the killer and put it back on.
But maybe Ian Bailey was forensically aware, and maybe he took off the coat before he dropped that block. For that purpose, to prevent blood smatters.
Memory fades over time, and I find it questionable that this particular statement was taken by the Gardaí 10 years after the event.
Statement taken on the 4th of May, 2006.
I mean, all the evidence about scratches and so on, that was all very speculative. Remember, in a jury trial, especially for murder, a judge is quite likely to say, I'm not allowing this evidence in, it's prejudicial. You can only prosecute if you believe that there's evidence to support the prosecution.
Pull the front page out a little bit straight, that's perfect.
My second arrest, which was about a year after, on January, my birthday, when they pretended not to know it was my fucking birthday, when I said, you got my fucking date of birth there on the fucking forms, you know it's my birthday. Oh, well, happy birthday. Fuck off. They weren't quite as hostile as the first bunch of fuckers who arrested me, but I wasn't very pleased to see them.
We had Ian's second arrest in January 98. They filed DPP, no charges.
Est-ce que vous pensez qu'un jour, réellement, le coupable sera connu?
Ah, il est connu. Le problème, c'est qu'il soit arrêté. Connu, ça, il y a.
Meanwhile, in France, Sophie's second husband, Daniel, fought to keep the pressure up. But even with the help of his good friend, French President Jacques Chirac, he couldn't manage to get Bailey charged with murder. A year and a half after Sophie's death, Daniel married his fourth wife. On the same weekend, Sophie's family erected the cross in Toormore. His new wife, Melita, would have understood his pain. She herself had been subject to the trauma of a murder. That of her mother, which, like Sophie's murder, remains unsolved. Despite his criticism of the guards, Daniel travelled to Cork in the year 2000 to meet with them.
J'ai jamais voulu retourner. Donc j'y suis allé avec un ami avocat et puis ils m'ont dit dans leur bureau ce qu'ils savaient. Ils savent tout.
Inspector Dwyer sent him off.
C'est-à-dire qu'il n'y a pas le témoin qui l'a vu assassiner, mais il y a tout le faisceau de preuves. En France, il aurait été mis en examen, jugé, condamné, avec le même dossier.
Now, a lady came by earlier on and left me with this box. I asked her for her name. She said she'd come back and pick it up. She told me it was Pandora, Miss Pandora, she said, and told me to be very careful if I was to open it. But she told me that whatever came out of this box, at the bottom of the box, there'd be a tiny little bit of hope left. And this is what I'm looking for. Oh. So this is the eggs department. Right. Good morning, good people.
We haven't thought ahead, you see. We've kept it in the here and now, and it's healthier, really. It writes and I paint, so that's what we've always done, you know. For the first few years, we didn't see many people, and locally people were backing off us a lot. It was like 50-50, actually, we reckoned. 50% people believed we had nothing to do with it, and the other 50 thought we had. So it was very strange, you know.
Yeah, nice to see you. Yeah, and if you want advice on chickens, come to us, because we are chicken people. Nice to see you. All the best. People come up and they wish the best, and it gives me a sort of, you know, it bolsters me. And I'm very appreciative. I'm very touched by it often. Such is the life. I've been forced into becoming a wheeler dealer, a tangler and a wrangler. Now that's the sunset over Dunmanus Bay. In oil, hardwood frame, we would negotiate.
I met him about 30 years ago nearly. I've reared 3 great girls, and they think I should have left Ian. That's their honest opinion.
Why?
Because it taints me, being connected to him. You know? I went to get paintings into a new gallery in Clonakilty. So he was going to take some when I went in, and I said I'd come back with some in a week's time. Ian took them in and he said, don't want them. Just like that. Right. Out. Don't want anything to do with you. So that's the tainting, I mean, you know?
This we collected in one folder. All the hate mail Ian Bailey got sent to his house. A new home. Move, you'd be really happy there. To Ian Bailey, the woman basher, and Jules, wrinkle-faced witch, rotten hell. Now it's Ian and Jules. Wrinkle-faced witch, like she's involved. Jules Thomas Skull, neighborhood witch. It's just this is a letter from the police about threatening phone calls. Hope to visit one of these nights. Wow. Wow. Syringe in the post. This just looks like bullets, yeah. He doesn't seem to believe that anybody actually is against him, you know? It's kind of like an emotional dyslexia, that he can't read it or doesn't want to read it, but it's complex.
A 1,000 arrows they fired at him and failed to kill the spirit. 1,000 arrows they fired at him and failed to kill the poet within. And then I go into the spoken word bit of the poem, and then I bring the drum back in at the end, which is 1,000 arrows they fired at me and failed to kill the spirit. 1,000 arrows they fired at me and failed to kill the flame. 1,000 arrows they fired at me and failed to kill the poet within. Shin Shin.
Well, I came to Ireland to move a cousin in and never left. Skull was really sort of laid back. It was really just a very chill place to be. Lots of nice traditional music in the courtyard. Nice people.
Do you know where you were when you first heard of Sophie's murder?
I was sitting on a bus coming down from Ballinascarthy on the national bus. The news was on the radio, and it came on about a woman's body being found in a boreen in West Cork. I actually thought it was... Well, my fear was that it was Jules.
You thought it was Jules that was murdered?
Yeah. It was 6 months before the murder. It was early in the morning, and there was a knock on the door, and it was Virginia, Jules's daughter, with the doctor saying, could I take Jules to the hospital? And as I walked through the door, I could hear these sort of animal, that's the only way you can explain it, animal sounds. So one eye was completely turned in and swollen, lumps of hair out of her head, gouges in her face.
People who were perhaps in doubt began to change over to thinking, yes, he has beaten a woman. Perhaps it went too far this time.
Jules, I'm afraid I'm going to have to ask you about the violence.
Well, the thing was, it was drinking always. He was fine when he wasn't drinking. And it brings out the worst in people.
Yeah.
If they drink too much, especially spirits. You can imagine how bad Ian will get on spirits, you know?
Yeah.
No, I've blocked it out now. I cured myself of thinking of it, so I don't. You know, it's only pushing myself through more agony, why bother? And he hasn't been violent since, even though he's drank quite a lot. He's never touched me. I mean, he was so remorseful afterwards. So it's no good, bloody good. You just got to drink less and have a bit more self-control, you know?
Mm.
There is a nice person in there. We both drank too much.
Is he that kind of impulsive character who just, like, acts on a whim?
It's thoughtless. It's not even a whim. It's like an impulse, just like a child getting a temper on, you know. Yeah. It's just like... I don't think it's preconceived or anything.
Yeah.
My behaviour was very, very bad, and
The photos of Jules, they will be forever linked to the forensic of Sophie de Planty. And it's very difficult to get past.
I mean, it's to my total shame. We did have, I did hurt her. And I think on 2 or 3 occasions, and alcohol was a major part of that. And it's to my eternal shame. Yeah. But I have not, you know, I have nothing to do with this crime.
Do you mind me asking, Jules, are you scared of Ian?
No, I'm not. No, I'm not scared of him. I'm pissed off with him quite a lot of the time, but I'm not scared.
Ian Bailey said the newspaper coverage following his first arrest was the beginning of his demonisation.
His barrister, Jim Duggan, said Mr. Bailey had been subjected to trial by media.
In 2003, in an effort to clear his name, Ian Bailey sued 8 newspapers.
The newspaper's defence essentially was that they didn't say he killed Sophie Tosk on the planter, but that the Gardaí had treated him as a suspect and that they were entitled to report that.
Bailey was suing the newspaper for preventing him being able to earn a living, for ruining his life. They would have to prove that he was capable of murder.
The guards assisted, and I know this for a fact, that they assisted the newspapers. And this was, as it were, they got him to trial almost. The judge in the libel trials at many stages said this is not a murder trial.
Over 70 reluctant witnesses had been subpoenaed. Less than half took the stand. The newspaper's defence team produced evidence of a man who on several occasions admitted to killing Sophie.
The most compelling evidence, I thought, was Richie and Rosie Shelley. They were out celebrating New Year's Eve 1998. They met Jules Thomas and Ian Bailey, and they were invited back to the Prairie.
Statement of Richie Shelley, taken on the 2nd of July, 1999. Ian came into the kitchen and he was crying and became very emotional. I found it strange to see a man of his size crying. As he cried, "I did it," he said and repeated this statement about 4 or 5 times. Each time he said, "I did it," I said to him, "You did what?" But he did not answer me. When I persisted with my question, Ian said, "I went too far, I went too far."
It was abundantly apparent that they didn't have an axe to grind.
A local teenager claimed that out of the blue he told him, "I went up there with a rock one night and bashed her effing brains in."
You could have called this section The People versus Bailey.
He had confessed to 11 people. Why should they make it up?
Each one of those admissions was backed up by very credible witnesses.
Ian Bailey also denies having met Sophie. However, the French woman's neighbour, Alfie Lyons, told the court that he was 90% sure that he had introduced them.
He was here doing the gardening. I had mentioned to him, I said, "Sophie's down in the house now." And then she came up and I introduced her to Bailey. I said, this is Ian Bailey, and he's been doing some gardening work for me, you know. And so he came over and shook hands with her, and that was it. But when it became important after Sophie was murdered, when I was asked about it, I was, you know, I could remember it, and yet memory is such an elusive thing that you can't always be sure what you're remembering is what happened. Could only say that I remembered it. I was 90% sure that that was what happened.
The state objected to any of the investigating Gardaí being called to give evidence. But the newspapers then, under disclosure, they wanted to see Ian Bailey's diaries, which had been, of course, taken by the Gardaí and being examined as part of their general investigation.
And what sort of stuff was in the diaries?
Well, it's just everything I'd written over the years. I mean, a lot of it was like bad writing, shit writing, and I was keeping all the stuff I'd written and all the stuff to do with my personal stuff, and I was going to bundle it and put it into a book called Lessons in Life the Hard Way, Part 1.
The counsel said to him, this is how he opened his reference to the diaries. He said, "Would you describe yourself, Mr. Bailey, as an animal?" And Bailey says, "No, I would not describe myself as an animal." And he said, "I ask you again, would you describe yourself as an animal?" "No," he said, "I wouldn't describe myself as an animal." And he says, "Well, that's strange," he said, "because here I have a diary in which you describe yourself as an animal for the assaults that you perpetrated on your partner." A pin would be heard drop after that statement.
Ian Bailey's diaries were forensically examined. Writings about violence, about alcohol, substance abuse, about sexual preferences, personal behaviour. Enormous attention was focused on Mr. Bailey's history of violence against his partner, Jules Thomas.
Oh, they use all my writings and personal stuff. And very, very private personal stuff where I'd actually gone in and analysed what, and I realised I was drinking too much. Well, it was whiskey, actually, basically. Just should never have really drunk spirits.
One of the more interesting pieces of evidence to emerge during this libel case centred here on Cailfada Bridge, about a mile from Sophie's house. A shopkeeper from Schull told the court that she saw Ian Bailey here at 3 a.m. on the night of Sophie's murder.
Statement of Marie Farrell. I now know this man to be Ian Bailey from Schull.
Marie Farrell was described as the star witness of the libel case. Her evidence was absolutely central because Ian Bailey always maintained that he had never left his house on December the 22nd. I mean, I was in court and it was astonishing to hear the evidence that she had given.
So now you go into the libel trial, yeah?
Yeah. Oh, I was panicking.
She maintained that she had been harassed by Ian Bailey, that she felt threatened by him.
She told the court.
He would make cutthroat gestures. He was torturing me. My life was a living nightmare because I couldn't even stay in my shop.
I said that he was harassing me and he was calling into the shop and he was threatening me, and none of that ever happened.
Did he ever do that to you?
Never. Never.
So he never threatened to slit your throat?
Never did.
So when the thing they got from you was a statement to say that you saw him outside your shop and at Cailfada Bridge?
Yeah.
To spend Christmas alone in West Cork.
The murder happened and the local guard came to the shop with a videotape and he asked me to bring it home and watch it and see was that the man that I had seen. And I brought it back to the guard station in Schull the next day and I said, you know, that is not the man that was outside the shop.
Wow.
And they said, we know that your man there on the tape, that Ian Bailey, he murdered that woman. And if he's not stopped, he's going to kill again. And there is nobody can put him out of his house that night. But if you say that it was definitely him you saw, and give us 2 lines of a statement, that'll be the end of it.
Wow.
And I remember being on the stand and thinking, will I just tell this judge that this is all lies and go? And then I looked down at the back of the court and there's a lot of the guards that were involved in the case. So I said nothing.
It was a civil action.
Almost by default, it became a murder trial.
The libel trial was like a murder trial.
The libel trial started a fire. And out of the ashes, the faint glimmer of a murder trial began to emerge in France.
Said a word since you've been gone, but any liar couldn't say as well. I just can't believe the static coming on. You're my ground, my safe and sound.
Today, Judge Patrick Moran ruled against Ian Bailey on all 3 points. The newspapers didn't brand him the murderer, and Judge Moran had no hesitation in describing Mr. Bailey as a violent man.
Crying out, it's Jubilee. We sold ourselves for love, but now we're free.
And where there were conflicts in key aspects of the evidence, Judge Moran believed the witnesses for the newspapers.
Only one of us was real, and that was me.
I don't really understand that lyric. I haven't quite understood that lyric.
I heard the snake was baffled by his sin. He shed his scales to find the snake within.
Ian lost his battle with the papers. He achieved 2 technical victories. Small comfort in that. He came to clear his name, but left with his reputation in tatters.
Mr. Bailey, how do you feel about your reputation now?
It's and do not care who takes this bloody hill. I'm angry and I'm tired all the time. I wish there was a treaty. I wish there was a treaty between your love and mine.
For 25 years, Sophie's family believe there is a killer on the loose in Ireland. Encouraged by the evidence that emerged in the libel trial and the failure of the authorities to charge Bailey, they decided it was time to take matters into their own hands.
What's the best movie you've ever seen?